Okay, so last time we studied about the arrays, and typically arrays are type of variables wherein we can actually use it to store our data types, and basically it allows us to manipulate on our data. We can store multiple elements of data in a particular array, and basically we already discussed the one dimension array. Okay, and an array is typically looks like this, no? If you have noticed, in the following example we have a 2 by 2 array. Okay, and then this array is composed of 3 rows and 3 columns, no? So the way we read this one, for example, we have integer array, so that means we are declaring an integer type of array with a variable name of ARR as our array's name, and the square brackets here indicates that we have a 2 by 2 or two-dimensional array with an array size of 3 by 3, and this first bracket here indicates our row, and the second one indicates our column. So basically we have 3 rows. This is row 1, row 2, row 3, and we have 3 columns: column 1, column 2, and column 3. So basically this is a matrix, no, that we have created, a 3 by 3 matrix. To visualize a 3D array, no, so this is a 2 by 2 or two-dimensional array. However, in this case we have a 3-dimensional array. How do we know that it's a 3-dimensional array? So we use the following declaration, declaring that this is an integer type of an array, and we have a 2 by 3 by 3. That means we have 2 arrays. This is array 1 and array 2, okay, that has 3 rows, 1 2 3, 1 2 3, and has 3 columns, 1 2 3, 1 2 3. So that's a 3 by 3 array and a 3 by 3 array. So the 2 here indicates the number of array, the 3 here indicates the number of rows, and the 3 here in the last position is the number of columns. Alright, now to access the element, for example, no, we have an array of 2 arrays. Now this is our first array and this is our second array. We have a 3 by 3 size of 2 arrays. Now if you want to access this element of the array, we use the following details, no? This indicates, the first one indicates the position of our first array. This is 0 array and this is 1 array, because we know that the element inside this parameter, inside this square bracket, starts always with 0. Now this is the 0th array and this is the first array. 0th first array. So basically that's the meaning of 0. So to access this, we need to access the 0th array, which is this one, okay, and then we need to access the row, and this is first row, and you can see here that the first row is called the 0th row. Okay, so this is the 0th row, and the 2 here represents the position of our column, which is 0, 1, and 2. The 2 here indicates our third column. So if we want to access this element, we write it as array 0 of the first array with the row 0 of the first row and column 2, which is the third column from this particular array. So that is basically how we can access that. Okay, so the name, this one is 0, 0, 0. This is 0, 1, 0, 0, 1, and 0, 0, 2. Okay, this one is 0, 0, 2. Now, how to initialize 3D array? So let's review first how we can initialize 3D. Okay? Yes, it's always from 0, diba? If you remember, I will show you an example of our one-dimensional array. We know the elements here is composed of, this is a one-dimensional array, and we can assign a one-dimensional array with these particular elements, no? So you can see a one-dimensional array is enclosed with a single curly brackets, and it always starts with the zeroth element. Our zeroth element here is number 1. Okay, so the content or the element 1 here is what we call the zeroth element. So we can recall that if we want to print for the zeroth element, we can say that array 0 is our zeroth element. Okay, so let's have that para makita natin tong zeroth element. Okay, so the zeroth element of the array is, so pag niran natin to, it will print the zeroth element of the array is 1. So from the drawing, from the declaration, our zeroth element is 1 because we used the array with the zeroth element. If you want to access 2, you can just say it's the first element. It's different. The zeroth element is different from the, this is the first element naman. Okay, the first element. So pag niran natin yan, that is the first element, no? Which is 2. Okay. Now this loop here is to print the values of all the contents of our array. So pinrint natin, if you remember, I discussed this sometime last week. Okay, indicating that if you want to print all the elements in this array, you need a for loop, no? You need to start with a 0 of the integer, and then you use this counter to represent the number of elements. Okay, so I will be less than 5, should be less than 5. And why? Because it starts with zeroth element. No, this is the zeroth element. So from the zeroth element, you're going to loop, and then you're going to increment the number of elements. So that means you're going to positional wise, because we're using the I as our position of the element here in printing. So it's going to loop 5 times. Okay, and it will print, basically, as you can see from here, it printed 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Okay, so that is basically how we can print a one-dimensional array elements using a single loop. Okay, now getting back here, no, from the question of Marcion, from 0 talaga yung count, sir? Yes, it's always the first element should always start in the 0. In this case, this is how we can initialize a 3D array, no? Remember, if you remember also, This is a 1D. What about the two-dimensional array? This is the two-dimensional array. Okay? So the two-dimensional array starts with the row, and the second one is the column. So how many rows we have? We have 2. This is row 1 and this is row 2. And how many columns we have? We have 3. 1, 2, and 3. 1, 2, and 3. So for each row, row 1 and row 2, we have 3 elements. That's why it's called a two-dimensional array. And we can print that using 2 for loops. Now we have one loop here, looping for the row. Actually, we're looping for the row. That's why you can see from here the value of the I here should be less than 2. So this is the loop for the row. So paano sir malalaman kung naglo-loop tayo sa row? Tingnan mo, no? Look on the comparator in the condition. If the condition is looping on the value of the row, that is looping on the row. And meanwhile, you can see from here that we are looping on what? On the column, because the value of the column here, okay? So you can see from here, if the name of the array is like that, the first is the row, okay? And the second is what we call the column. So we're looping here on the row, looping on the row, looping on the column. And then finally, we can print the result by using the elements. No? We will print all the elements of I and the elements of J on this particular array. This will not run properly because, as you can see, the array here name is ARR, but here A lang. Okay, so we have to change this one to ARR. Okay, so let's run this one. So what's wrong? I think there's something wrong here. Okay, here. So here we need to fix this one. Okay, so let's just copy this and put it here. Okay, and let's remove this. So this loop should have a loop here. Let's remove this, and this is the loop for this one. And then we have to remove this. Okay, and let's remove this one first. Okay, so again, this one is for this, and for the first for loop, this one. For our second for loop, this one. Okay, to print this one here. Okay, so again, so this will be our you need to check for the partnership of all the brackets. So this one should be partnered here. The first for loop is this one, partner siya dito, and the second for loop inside is this one. Okay, so this loop is for the row and this loop for the column. So running it will give us 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, so this is the loop for the row and this is the loop for the column. Okay, okay, this is the loop for the if we want to if we want to print everything, that is how we are going to print the all the elements inside. Okay, now getting back in our problem, this is how we can initialize the 3D array. Okay, and as you can see, we have two arrays, no? So by the way, this one is the first method, no? So as you can see, the method 1 is to assign the variable integer array of 2 by 2 by 3 to this particular elements inside, no? So pwede tayo mag method 1 yan. So that means you have two arrays and you are placing these arrays, these elements, into this particular matrix. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So if you change the order of this one, this will also change. Okay? So this is the first initialization method of initializing a 3D array. The second one is this one. Okay? Parehas lang siya kanina, but this one is method 2. Method 2 has many brackets, but you can see the difference between the two, that you can see there are two arrays. So you can see here I have a program here. So this is the program for the 3D array. So as you can see from here, so to explain to you this particular example, so this array 2, 2 and 3, this represents the array, number of arrays. So we have two arrays, and this one represents that we have two rows per array. Okay, and then we have 3 columns per array. So that is the meaning of array 2 by 2 by 3. And how do we declare that? We are using actually plenty of brackets, no? The outer brackets represents the enclosure of the array. The second bracket here, as you can see, this represents the first array, okay, the zeroth array, and the second one represents the second array. The third bracket that you can see here is the row, okay, the first row, and this is the second row. From the second array, we have the first row and the second row. So this one is much better, no? And as you can see from here, you can see the difference between the two. Okay, and you can notice that to be able to print or display all the elements of this particular array, we need 3. Okay, we need 3 loops. The first one is to loop for the first array, or for the number of arrays. So we're looping on array 0 and array 1. The second is to loop on the rows, this one. So you can see this is for the number of array, this is for the number of row, and finally we have the number of columns. Okay, so ganun kasimple, no, yung array. If you want to print all the information or the elements inside your array, you can loop, you can use multiple loops, okay, indicating that we are looping on the array, we're looping on the row, and looping on the column. And basically we can print that using %d with the following parameters inside, which is the loop for the array I, the loop for the row, which is j, and the loop for the k, which is for the column. So running this one, we will have display of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So this is by using an array and looping through the array with a 3-dimensional array. Alright? Now, this is the example that I gave you. No? I put it in the presentation. So basically this is the 1-dimensional array, this is the 2-dimensional array, and finally we have the 3-dimensional array here as an example. Now, can we multiply 2 matrices or 2 arrays? Yes, we can, no? However, if we multiply this array to this one, we should have a resultant array, no? We call this as the resulting matrix or the resultant array. Okay, and how do we do the multiplication? So we do the multiplication by first multiplying the 0th row to the 0th column of the second array. So basically, if you want to determine the first value of our result here in our resulting matrix, we need to multiply the first column of the row and the first column, I mean the first row to the first column. Okay, so let's do the multiplication. So 1 times 1, so lagay natin yan dito, 1 times 1. Okay, next is the second one, 2 times 1. Okay, and last is 3 times 3. So we need to add this all together because we're doing a multiplication. So 1 times 1 plus 2 times 1 plus 3 times 3 is equal to 12. So basically, the resulting matrix will be equal to 12. Now, if we want to know the resulting matrix, what is the product of this particular element here? So we need to multiply not the first row and not the first column, but we need to multiply the first row and the second column, because this one is in the first row and in the second column. Okay, so again, similar demonstration. We multiply 1 by 2, we multiply 2 by 2, we multiply 3 by 1, and we add it, a total of 9. Then there it is, our resulting matrix. So to know the content of this, we need to multiply the first row and the third column here. So that is the first row and the third column. So again, 1 by 3, 2 by 1, 3 by 2, add them all together, equals 11. So there it is, our 11. Similarly, if we want to know this one, okay, so we're now in the second row. So we're not doing the first row. So instead, we need to choose the second row. And since we are in the first column, we will use the first column here. Okay? So we do the multiplication, 1 by 1, 2 by 1, and 1 by 3, total of 6. Therefore, the value of this one is 6. So getting to know this one, we'll multiply the row 2, sorry, and column 2. Okay? Row 2, column 2. So this is the name of that column. This is in the row 2, column 2. Okay? So we put the answer as 7, because 7 is the product, or the sum of the product of multiplying the matrix. Again, this one should be row 2, sorry, and column 3. Yeah, I'm confused. Okay, so that will be 1 by 3, 2 by 1, and 1 by 2 equals to 7. So that will be 7. Similarly, this one should be the third row and the first column. Okay, so that is the product of 3 by 1 plus 1 by 1 plus 2 by 3, which is equal to 10. Okay, next, the third row should be multiplied to the second column, 3 by 2 plus 1 by 2 plus 2 by 1, which is equal to 10. And finally, we have the third row should be multiplied to the third column, that's 3 by 3 plus 1 by 1 plus 2 by 2, which is equal to 14. Our resulting matrix now will be 14. Alright, so I think madali naman siya, no, na maintindihan. So that's how we can multiply arrays. I think I have some examples of that later. We'll have some examples, practical examples. But first, there are important things here to consider, no? Now, before you can multiply two matrices, you have to remember that the number of columns in the first array, this is the first array, right? This is the row, this is the column. The number of column of the first array or first matrix should be equal to the number of rows. This is the number of columns, right? This is the number of rows in the second matrix. So dapat siya equal siya. So the column and the row should be equal, so you can perform multiplication of two matrices. In this case, you will see that the number of column here in the first array is 2, and the number of row here in the second array or second matrix is 3, which means they are not equal. Can we multiply them? The answer is no. We cannot multiply an equal column of the first array and an equal row from the second array. Alright? So imagine we can multiply 1 by 1. Okay? And also we can multiply 2 by 1. But what about this number 3? Here, no? In our row. In our third row. Where do we multiply it? So this will happen. So we cannot multiply 3. Therefore, this example tells us that we cannot multiply two matrices which has different size of column in the first matrix and different size of rows in the second matrix. To be able to multiply, we should have an equal number of columns in the first matrix and equal number of rows on the second matrix. Right? So let's have an example. So I have an example here of a sample array. Okay, so the program tells us to write a program that reads a 5 by 5 array. So basically this 5 by 5 array is a two-dimensional array. Okay, this is the row and this is the column. Okay, and it should print the row sum and the column sum. So basically our input will be, we will enter the row 1 up to row 5. So there it is. So there's no need to enter because we already declared the array here. This is our first row, second row, third row, fourth, and fifth. That's why we have 5 here. For the column, we have this column, first column, second, third, fourth, and fifth. That's why we have 5 here. So to be able to do that, we need to initialize first the sum as 0, no? Because we are using multiple loops here. So to prevent it from happening, we need to declare sum as equal to 0, so that the sum of the first loop will not be added to the second loop. Okay? So this is how we can do the total, no? So we can just sum the array. Instead of printing, we can sum the array. So this is the sum, and then we can print the sum. So you will notice here that we are looping on the row, and this one is looping on the column. So basically they have similar values here because we have an even number of a pair number of equal number of rows and columns. Okay, and then this is very important function, because if we try to comment this one out and also this one in the last part, you will notice that the answer will be different, no? So this one is for the column. So you will notice here that this is the column, right? So you will notice that the column here was placed here instead of the row, because here to print the column total, we need to loop on the column, and internally we will loop on the row. So baligtad naman ito, no? Ito, we loop on the row, internally we will loop on the column. And now this is to print the sum total of the row. But for the column total, we need to loop on the column, and internally we will loop on the row. And then basically this is the sum of the array of the two elements of the array, which is I and j. Alright? And wherein we use it for the looping. And then we print the sum. So basically, if we try to run this one, you will notice that the answer is wrong, no? Why is it wrong? So based on our example, this one is a total of 30. Okay, that's 30. But this one is not equal to 57. This is around 27. So 5 plus 3, 8 plus 17, that's 25, plus 1 plus 1, that's 27. Saan nanggaling yung 57? Yung sagot dito, the first answer is 30. It was added here because hindi natin ginawa yung initialization na sum will be equal to 0. So kaya nang nagloop siya, dinagdag niya yung sagot dito. Tapos yung sagot naman nito, dinagdag natin yung sagot nito. And the answer of this one was added here. And the answer of this one was added here. The answer of this one was added here. The answer of this one was added here. Then this one was added here. This one was added here. And finally, the answer of this one was added here. So this is wrong, no? Because we want to know the sum of the rows for every row, and this is not doing it properly because of this commented out. So we need to initialize our sum back to 0 so that when it loops back, the sum will be equal to 0 again. Okay? And not the sum of the element that was printed out. Okay, so let's try to change and run it again. So we can see from here we have now the correct answer. So this is now the correct answer. So the correct answer will be 30, 27, 41, 36, and 28. And pababa, we have 34, 37. This is also 37. And then we have 32. And then finally we have 22. Right? This is how we can do summing up of rows, summing up of columns using a two-dimensional array. Alright? So, do you have any questions? Questions? If you don't have any questions, and if it is clear to you, I'm going to stop now the video.